Good afternoon and welcome to class. We'll get started as soon as I manage to get everything turned on. Let's share a pie chart, and now let's share Chrome. Okay, let's talk about a couple of things. This is the last week before spring break. The lectures today will be on functions, part 1 today and part 2 on Wednesday. The majors sections covered this topic last week, so the lab is actually on functions as well. I will give you, I've talked to Kevin and Mariah, I will give you enough material in today's lecture, I believe, to do everything on the lab that they're going to hand out tomorrow. They can cover everything, and I'll go into some of the topics in much more detail, but you should not have a problem getting the lab started and maybe even finish tomorrow during your time with your TAs with Kevin and Mariah. We'll make sure of that. There is no homework this week. I'm getting ahead of my administrative notes. Exam 1 grade should be available. There is one I have to grade. Apologies. I had one student took a makeup later on, which I still have to grade. I was going to get to it Saturday, and then things happened. So I will get that grade up there. Everybody else is up. The grades were pretty good. I was impressed. There were a lot of A's. I'll be honest, it was a fairly easy test, but that doesn't bother me so much. I'm still really pleased with the performance. And because of that, and because it's important to get started with today's lecture on functions, I'm not going to walk through the exam in class today like I normally would. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions at the end of the class if you have any, or if you think I made a mistake. A couple of things I did want to go over. Question 12. After I graded a number, I decided to let one thing slide. I mentioned very briefly, and only very briefly, when you're using the join command in Python, join takes a list of strings and connects it all together by whatever thing you tell it to, in this case, a hyphen, into a single string. But join only works if you have a list of strings. If you have a list of integers, it won't work. You have to cast the integers to strings first. And a number of you weren't sure in question 12 on the exam whether that original list I gave you was a list of ints or a list of strings. So I wound up letting it slide. If you did not cast all of the integers in the original list to strings before joining them, I didn't take anything off. Normally that's going to be a 2-point hit, but okay, it wasn't absolutely clear that those were integers rather than the string, the character 1, the character 2. So I let that go. The only thing to remember there again is that join, the list you have to join have to be strings. They can't be integers. Question 13, we're going to walk through that in a minute. That's one thing I do want to go on. The error that didn't throw an error in PyCharm, I just let that slide no matter, don't think anybody lost any points on that no matter what you did. Python is really weird. You have Booleans that aren't really Booleans, which cause that not to be an error in a particular version of PyCharm. It was an error in some systems and not in others. So we'll walk through why that's weird and what happens. I put an explanation on Discord in the non-majors channel, but I want to walk through it. The last programming question, question 17, the most common error was not following the instructions. I told you in the instructions to use a loop to generate the Fibonacci numbers. Now, obviously, you can't generate the first two. You have to know the first two are both 1, and they were given. After that, you were supposed to generate it in a loop. A number of you went ahead and just created a list manually that said, here are the 11 numbers we're dealing with. That was a 3-point error, but I was pretty generous. Again, that was 7 out of 10 if that's all you did. Again, pretty pleased with the test requests. Question here. Can we go over the lab that's due today? If we have time, I'm still struggling. Yep, we will do that. If we have time at the end, we'll go over the lab. I'll have to remember. I Apologies, it's not on the top of my head. I'll have to go over what it is, but yeah, we will do that at the end. What I want to do now is jump very quickly to PyCharm. I don't want to waste too much time on this. I just want to explain things. I may have mentioned, if not, I apologize, that in Python, anything that is not 0, if you evaluate it as a Boolean, will equate to true, and 0 equates to false. It doesn't mean they're equal to true or equal to false. It means they evaluate and they would be different. Now, what I have in the Python console right here is the statement that I wanted to throw an error, which it should have. But in PyCharm, this isn't. I think I said print yes. And of course, this works. So this is not an error. Here's what happens. The first thing we have to do is go in the parentheses, and we say 6 and 7. Now, Python takes 6 and 7, which takes 2 Booleans. The and takes 2 Booleans. But remember I said, and again, we didn't go into it. Don't worry, this is really too obscure for this class. But for this level, it's not part of the 201 subject material. But 6 being non-zero, if Python has to evaluate it as a value, it's going to say true. And 7 being non-zero is also going to be true. But this is not something that has a Boolean value of true because it's not equal to true. So if you say 6 and 7, Python is going to evaluate that as 7. So 6 and 7 is now 7. And now what you have then, if you look at the original statement, you have the character 7 is not equal to 6 and 7 in parentheses equates to 7, which is greater than 6. Now, Python, why is that true? Well, the first thing, Python operator precedence, the greater than comes before the not equal to. So 7 is greater than 6 is clearly true. So this is 7 is not equal to true. And what's going to happen there is, even though 7 is not equal to true, this is obvious. This is a character with a string with a Boolean. That's not equal to true. Rather than throwing you an error, PyCharm says, okay, we're going to get the value of Boolean true. Now, that is not saying that 7 is equal to true. That comes out as false because 7 is not equal to true. It evaluates to true, and evaluates to true is not the same as equal to true, and you just get into this hideous mess. So, but that is why if you ran it in PyCharm, you did not get an error. That is way too deep for 201. That's not 201 material. You're not required to know it. If you really want to get into Python, there's some interesting weirdness like that. So I don't want to spend too much time. That's something else we can handle offline if you've got a question. But that was what happened. There are other Python compilers or interpreters that if you ran that expression, you would get the error you were supposed to get. Again, going back to the slides, going back to the exam, I just accepted that one on question 13. Okay, other administrative notes. Next week, spring break. There is no homework next week. Combination because spring break is next week, and also because the major sections are working on a take-home exam all of this week. As I mentioned, and thank you all for cooperating so far. Unfortunately, there's always, with computers these days and the internet, a lot of cheating. The majors have a take-home exam. It was put out over the weekend. They have until midnight Friday night to submit it. And guess what? The questions on the take-home exam are already all over the internet, and students are submitting the internet's answers to the take-home exam. We actually run software that detects that, and you get caught, and then unpleasant things happen. So thank you for not doing that. This is why we don't have take-home exams. It's just that. Again, but because they're taking their exam, and because next week's spring break, there ain't no homework. It's just a lab. The labs on functions, which is today's topic, we'll have enough to get into it. After spring break, the week we come back, you'll get homework 5. Remember, there's only 6 homeworks. We're almost done with homeworks. We're about to start the major programming projects, which you'll get 2 weeks to do. So the first week after spring break, you get homework 5. The second week after spring break, you get big programming project 1. We'll be working on that after spring break, no problem. And the last note I need to make is that in tomorrow's lab, you will be told, I was talking to Kevin and Mariah before class, you will be told on the assignment that the lab is due next Monday, the Monday in the middle of spring break. It's not. The lab that's assigned tomorrow is going to be due 2 weeks from today, Monday the 22nd, the Monday you come back after spring break. You don't have to submit your lab in the middle of spring break. We're not going to do that to you. Personally, I'd recommend getting it done before spring break so you can enjoy your week off, but if you can't, it's not due till the 22nd. Okay. Now, let's get on to functions. Since we need to cover this, we've got a lot of stuff to do. Functions are the 4th type of program control flow. You have sequential, conditional, iterative, and now we have functions. Functions, the idea is fairly simple. We're in the program, we're just chugging along, we're going to execute, we're going to execute, and then we're going to jump to some complete other part of the program and execute some stuff there. And I'll illustrate exactly what I mean. And we're going to execute the code that's there, and we're going to come back to where we were before we jumped. Okay, so we've got a case of, where's the shape? Yeah, this would be good enough. We're chugging along in the program, we're executing, and then what are we going to do? We need to call a function. We need to get something done that's separate. And so we pass control from the main program over to our function. Okay, and then the function's going to execute, and after the function's done executing, it's going to pass control right back to the main program. So sequential, we take the main program and we execute a statement, and we execute the next statement, we execute the third statement, we execute the fourth statement, we just go in order. Conditional, we hit an if. If this, elif, else, whatever. We do things sometimes. Iterative, while loops, for loops, we do things over and over and over again. Functions, you're in the program, you jump to someplace else. When you're done, you jump back. Okay, this is another control flow program. You know, when you ask what is the next statement to be executed, it's something way over there. Okay, we all know in math, function is a unique mapping between an input and one output. Put in a value for X, you get back one output. It's sort of the same idea in Python. It's a block of code called by its name that takes input and returns a specific output. Let's get to PyCharm and be real. Okay. Right now, what I've got, I've already put in if name equals main. This is going to be for now my main program. Now, on the practice exam, there was something I mentioned that I hadn't covered in class. How do you edit a string? How do you change one letter in a string? You can't change a string. That's from 3 weeks from now. They're immutable. We've said you can't change a string by editing directly, but you can change a list by changing a list element directly. So we'll do this by using a list. And so we have string s equals, I think I use something like Baltimore County Public Schools. And then I had a typo, March 1. Okay. Now, change that 3 to an E. Okay, you cannot just go in and say, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Okay. Let's go into it, I think. I have to count. There we go. It's sub 33. Okay, change that to an E. We cannot just say S sub 33 equals E. That's not allowed. Won't work. Okay, because you can't edit a string directly like that. So here's what we can do. Create a list, L. Now, how am I going to split the list so that each character, or split the string, so that each letter is an element of the list? And I do something like this. For character in S, L dot append character. Okay. So let's run this code. And then we'll print out L. Okay, and let's run this to make sure it runs. And you can see here that I now have a list where each character, in my string is a separate element in the list. Now I can edit a list. You know, I can change an element of a list fairly easy. So I can say L sub 33 equals E. Now I can join the things back together, and I can say new S equals empty string, don't put anything there, dot join L. And now I can print new S. And if I don't have any typos, this will run, and now I have fixed the string. So this is a fairly straightforward process. Okay, I have code. This is sequential coding, an assignment. Now I have iterative, a loop. This is how I create a list. Now I can edit the list element. Then I join more sequential, and we're done. But now suppose I want to do this again. With another string. Okay. The problem is I need to put the same code in again. And we don't want to put the same code in again because there's a chance of making a mistake. It's inefficient. It's whatever. So here's what I can do. I can say I'm going to define a function. Now, for these purposes, in today's lecture, I'll get to other stuff on Wednesday, but for today's lecture and for the lab, all of the functions I'm going to define are going to be physically put before the main program. Here's the deal. I'm going to define a function that is not a part of the main program. It's a separate piece of code, and so I'm going to physically put it above the main program. It does not have to be there. That's a style choice to make it clear. But for today's purposes, all the functions I write are going to be above the main program. So here's what I do. The reserved word def, D-E-F. Def means define. I'm going to define a function. Now, depending on where you're learning your Python, we use if name equals main. The old way in Python of doing that, of saying this is the main program, was just def main. So if you learn def main, that's the same thing that's going on here. We're defining something with a name. Okay? Def main is not used anymore. It's old. We use if name equals main. But for functions, we still use def. I'm going to call this function edit. And it's going to take 3 parameters, and I'll explain those, what those are. String, character, index, colon. Now, I need to put in some comments. So I'll put in the block for the comments, and I'll fill those out, and I'll fill that out. Okay. This is a function that edits a string by replacing the character currently at index with a new character. So this is a comment that says this is what the function does. Now, parameter. A parameter is a value passed to the function by the main program. What values are passed to the main program? In this case, they're going to be str, the string we want to edit, character, char, whatever you want to say that, the new character to insert in the string, and index where to put that new character. Now I'm going to return some value, the edited string. We'll work through this and hopefully explain what each of those means. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a function. I'm going to tell this function, here's a string. I want you to take that current string. I want you to replace whatever is right here at index with this character right here, this letter right here. And then I want you to return to me the edited string. How do we do it? Well, we just use the code that we had before. We create a new local variable list, which is an empty list. I'll explain the term local variable in a minute. For C in the string, L.append C. Now I have everything as a list. I have my entire string as a list. Okay. Now I can print it out, but I don't have to. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say L.index. That's wrong. It's L sub index equals char. What did I do wrong? Python's telling me I have an error. What did I do wrong? Interesting. I'm going to find out why that error is in there. Okay. And now I can rejoin and return. We'll call it new string equals, with no blank spaces, dot join L, return new string. Okay. I'm wondering why it is telling me I have what it thinks is an error here. We'll find out. This is the definition of a function. Reserved word def, function name, values passed in. Comments are just the description of what you're doing so you can read it. Code. And then return the return value. Okay. So that's my function. And now what I'm going to do is down here, I'm just going to get rid of this code from the old main program. And that's now should now be commented out. Okay. Now I'm going to call the function. I still have my S equals Baltimore County Public Schools. Now I'm going to say new string, new S equals edit of SE 33, print new S. And let's see what I've done wrong. Here we go. And it thinks I've got something indented wrong. Okay. Let's figure this out. Don't tell me it didn't like the commenting. Let's find out. Which line? There we go. I cannot believe that it's not supposed to matter about indentation with comments. Okay. All right. So, at any rate, this is the bottom line of how you define a function. Now, if I want to use the same function to do something else, now I will say y equals New Orleans Aints. And now I will need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Edit new y equals edit y s 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Print new y. Okay, let's run that again. Should have been 12. There we go. Okay, so now the reason for doing this, by the way, the reason for defining functions in Python is that I can run the same code. I can use the same code that I entered once with multiple different strings. The original way I did it with all this stuff that's been commented out now, I would have to retype that code every single string I wanted to edit. With this, with a function, I now write the code once, and I can run it over and over and over again with every different string that I need to edit. So therefore, that's a useful thing. Now let's go back to the I want another file, and then we'll go back to the slides and we'll go over some stuff before we come back to the second example. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So as I said, in Python, in a function definition is what's illustrated here. Now, this next example we're going to spend time on is how to calculate someone's age in days. They're going to give you the birth date, they're going to give you their current age, and you're going to calculate how old they are. Now, this code is a simple example. We're going to work on this and illustrate how you might refine your code. But this is the next example we're going to work, and here's the function definition. Remember, the word def right here is what you use. This tells Python, I am defining a function. Def is short for define, because we're computer scientists, we're lazy, we say keystrokes. Fine. Def means I'm going to write a new function. Then you have the name of the function. Okay. A valid function name in Python is anything that is a legal variable name. If it's a legal variable name, it's a legal function name, and you're okay. After the name, def name, in parentheses, is what's called parameters. Now, parameters are the values that are passed to the function from the main program or from the calling function. These are how the function gets its values. I'm going to pass this function a number of years, a number of months, and a number of days. And I'm going to put them all together to calculate how many days old somebody is. Now, the body of the function is the actual Python code. In this case, I have a fairly simple example. When I figure out how many months, days, and years old you are, I'm going to say your total number of days old, your age in days, is just 365 times years plus 30 times months plus days. I'm going to assume every month has 30 days. Okay, that's wrong. We'll fix that. But I'm going to start with the simplest case by saying every month has 30 days. Every year has 365 days. And I'm going to calculate how old you are that way. Now, if years is greater than 4, that means there's a leap year. There's a leap year every 4 years. For the purposes we're talking about, there is a leap year every 4 years. The rule is if it's divisible by 4, if it's a leap year, if it's long as it's not divisible by 100, unless it's divisible by 400. 2000 was a leap year. 2000 was a leap year because it's divisible by 400. 2100 is the next non-leap year. So the year 2100 will be the next 4-year interval that's not a leap year. I don't plan on being around here in 2100, so I hope you all are, but I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to say for every 4 years you are, add one day for a leap year. And then the return statement is the number of days. So this is the same thing I did in the example I just worked out with the edit the string, right? In the edit the string, I had a def to say, I'm doing a function. Then I had the name. In that case, it was edit. Here, it's going to be calculate days. Then I had the parameters over there. In that example, the parameters were the string, the character, and the index. Here, they're going to be years, months, and days. Then I had the body. I had the text of my Python statements that said, this is the calculation I want to do. And then I ended it with a return. What is the value I'm going to send back to whoever called me? In this case, I'm going to return num days. Okay. In the old case, I returned the modified string. In the edit case, I returned the modified string. Here, I'm going to return the num days. The reserved word return says this is what I'm sending back. Now, style-wise, in 201, we limit you to returning one value. You return one value in 201 from a function. Python does not limit you to returning one value. In Python, you can return arbitrary piles of stuff, okay? But that gets real ugly, and it detracts from the actual computer science we're trying to teach. So we have an arbitrary rule, and yes, we are arbitrary, in 201 that says, to simplify things, you can only return one value. Now, that one value may be a list. You can return a list. That's okay. But only one thing. So 201, you will always return with a function one thing or none, but no more than one. It just might be a list. In general Python, that's not a restriction. You can do it. But when you define a function, this is what you're going to do. Okay. To call it in the main program, you have to assign values to those variables. You have to assign values so you can call the function. Here, we're going to say, well, we got to be 23 years, 3 months, and 22 days old. And then we're going to figure out how many days old you are by calling calculate days. Now, in the main program, you say, this is the name of the function I want to call. And then you give a list of what are called arguments. In the main program, arguments are what you pass to the function. The arguments here are going to be matched up to the parameters here in the order you give them. So the match is ordered. So whatever value is here in YRS is going to be set for years here, and then months, and then days. So main program, arguments, function parameters, they get matched up in order. Let's go write another program and see how it works. Now, I want to say this is going to be my main program. Okay. I'm going to define my function up here. Years, months, days. And my code from my slide. Okay. Here is my function. Now I'll put a comment block in here that says what the function is. That's what you'll work on in the lab, among other things, but this is what the function does. Now, in the main program, as we said, we started out by saying somebody is 23 years, seven, age in days equal calculate underscore days. Print age. Your age in days is, comma, age. Okay. Now let's run that code. And we see that my silly, simple program calculated that this person is 8,493 days old. Okay. So, first illustration. I got values here, here, and here. I passed them as arguments. Those arguments were matched here. And so what I'll do is I'm going to add a statement here. Let me make sure I didn't have a typo in there. Okay. And I'll run it again. And what that'll do is that prints out the values. You can see that years is 23, months is 3, days is 7, which is exactly what I passed in. This was 23, this was 3, this was 7. Now, this is a case of passing in values of variables. I don't have to. I could pass in literals. Okay, I could pass in $31, 5, and 0. And it helps if I spell the name of the function right, because if I spell the name of the function wrong, it gives me an error. Let's run that now. And you can see in this case that when you call the function with values of 31 years, 5 months, and 0 days, you are 11,466 days old. Okay? So that's a fairly simple example of what we're doing when we're calling a function. We create something in the main program, we assign values, and then we call the function and do some cool stuff. Now, suppose we don't have anything directly setting in values, either literals here or assigning variables. Suppose we want to let the user input the values. So I'm going to comment these out. And I'm going to prompt the user for today's date and the user birthday, and I'll get the values for years, months, and days that way. Okay. This seems like a great place for another function. Okay. So I'm going to write a function, and I'm going to call it get years, months, and dates. I'm going to call it get dates. Okay. And I'm going to store its value in some list called age list. And this will be more clear when I finish writing it. It's going to call a function that I'm going to call get dates. And I'm not going to pass get dates anything. Get dates has no parameters or no arguments. Okay. Is that legal? Well, yes, it is. Def get dates. It has no parameters. Nothing is passed into get dates. Print this program determines your age in days. bdate equals input, enter your birthday in month, day, year. Tdate, today's date, equals input, enter today's date in MMDD YYYY. Now, once I have those, I have two strings that look like, today is 03/08/2021. So I have that string. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to split it on these slashes. Okay. I'm going to split the string on these slashes, and then I'm going to convert each of three values to an integer. So I'm going to say bdate list equals bdate dot split on the slash tdate list equals tdate dot split on the slash. Comment this out before I wind up sabotaging my whole program. Okay. Now I have two lists, one that looks like the string 03, the string 08, and the string 01. So since I know these are the same length, I'll sort of cheat and I'll say for I in range len bdate list, bdate list sub I equals int of bdate list sub I, and the same for tdate okay. Now I should have these two lists. So what I want to do is I want to run this code. We follow a rule, a software development practice called test as you go. You can see that this function is starting to get a little bit complicated. So what I want to do is I want to just test this code in this function, because if there's an error in it, I want to know it now. So I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to come down to a Python console, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run just the code in this function. Why? I want to know whether it works or not. If I write this entire program and then run the whole program and it crashes, it's going to take me the rest of the class period, and we're not going to get anything done to figure out the problem is. Right now, I just want to find out if this code works. Okay. What did I do? Everything's indented, and it wasn't supposed to be. Okay. All right, let's start here with no indentation. Let's make sure nothing's indented here. Fix these indentation problems. Big indents are cool. All right. This should run. My birthday. Oh, let's make up a day. May the 5th, May the 27th, 1927. What's today's date? March the 8th, 2021. Okay, it looks like it ran. What does tdate list look like? 3/8/2021. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's a list of integers. Bdate list, what does it look like? 5/27/1927. All I've done with this is I have tested the code in this function, and I have confirmed that so far it works correctly. Now, what I need to do is figure out what your age is, okay? Age is going to be a new list. And now I have to figure out days, months, and years. So the first value I need is, let's go, if we go down to the main program and see what we're going to call it. Okay. What we're going to do, the first value is going to be years. So age dot append tdate list -1. That's sub -1. Let's try this again. Minus bdate list sub -1. So I take the last values, and they are years, and that's going to give me the years. Now I'm going to do months minus 2 minus B date list sub minus 2. This is going to give me the number of months. And now I'm going to get the first value days, and now I'm going to return age. Okay? So let me take all of this code except for the return and make sure that it works. So let me find the function from here. Pardon me. Here we go. Okay. So this is my function. And I'll come and I'll put that in a Python console. Okay. And now I need something to call it. So I'm just going to say age list equals get dates. Try this again. Okay. Once again, we'll say your birth date is 05/27/1927. And today's date is 03/08/2021. And it ran. And now what is the value of age list? 94 years minus 19 months. That's, okay. I got my months and my days in order. You can see this is why we test. I got my months and my days out of order, and we'll deal with these negatives later. Okay, for now, so what I need to do, test as you go, I need to go back to my function, and this is going to be months are 0. And this is 1 or minus 2, either one would work. So now I have the code working. We're going to ignore the negative numbers for now because I'll show you how to fix them later. We now have the function working, so I can call this, and age list will return the actual value. Now I can say years equal age list sub 0, months equal age list sub 1, and days equal age list sub 2. And now I can call calculate days with years, months, and days. And now, what are the odds on this actually running? Once again, 05/27/1927, 03/08/2021. Your age in days is 34,232. So here I have written a function that says, I've written two functions that says in the main program, I call the getDates function, and that gives me a value for years, months, and age returned as a list. Key thing, getDates has 0 arguments. The function definition up here has 0 parameters. They have to match. Number of arguments exactly equals number of parameters. Okay. Once I've gotten that, then I can call my function calculate days, which I've used before. Years, months, and days. Now I print out the thing and it works, other than those negative numbers, and we'll worry about how to fix those. The answer is if your months is less than, if your months is negative, add 12 to it and subtract 1 year. If your days is negative, add 30 to it for now and subtract 1 month. That will make that be non-negative, and it actually works out the same way. Okay. So this is how we use functions to write a program structured, and now I can run this anytime I want to get dates for each user. I could put this inside a loop and get the first user, get the second user, get the third user, and I don't have to rerun or rewrite this code. I just put this code one place and I call it. Now, last point I want to make today, because it gets to the homework, the lab rather, and then I'll see if we can get to the homework and help you with questions there, is so far today, all of the functions are called by a main program. It does not have to work that way. Functions can call other functions. Suppose that I don't want to have this code as the first 3 lines of my getDates function. Suppose that I want to have another function that handles all the user input. Key thing in Python, you can define functions physically after other functions and call them. I'll explain that in a second. That's a weird statement. If you're not used to programming, I'll get to that in a second. You do not have to already have defined a function before you can invoke it, is what I'm getting to. So I can come down here physically above if name, below the other function, and I can say def user input birth date. Helps if I spell birth date, right? Today's date. This is where that code is going to get, that we had up above, is going to say print this program calculates your age in days. Birth date equals input, enter your birth date in month, day, year format. Today's date equals input, enter today's date in month, day, year format. Make sure that matches. Okay. Okay. Now, we just return. We have to create, remember, we can't, in this class, return the 2 separate values. So what we're going to do is create a list and now we're going to return L. So now we have a function to do that. So up here in this routine, in this function, we do not need these anymore. What we instead do is invoke the other the other function and say lists or dates, let's call it dates, dates equal user input and we need to have them have initial values. So bdate equals empty string, tdate equals empty string, because we have to have something to pass. We could write this so we didn't pass anything. And now we're calling dates equal user input, and now the user input is down here. Why would you do this? The answer is because if this function handles user input, this is where you can handle all your error coding. This is where you can determine if the user hasn't entered data in the right format, you could fix it. Now, let's see where I've messed up on this one. And what error message? How about that? Enter your birthday. 05, 27, 1927, 03, 08, 2021. Okay. L equals list birth date, today's date. Yep. All right. Let me fix that. That'll be real quick. All right. Let's, what did I do now? bdate list I equals int of bdate list I. Get date, change to 0. Which statement caused the problem? Dates, bdate list I equals int of bdate list I. Where did I say that? Invalid literal for int with the. This worked before when we ran it, so I have clearly done something wrong. So let's see what we're returning. Okay. Okay, so somewhere here, it did not actually print this statement. Add a blank space. We've got an error in there. Somewhere it's got a Okay. Let's see what we did. Okay, we actually returned the proper strings. This is what we did wrong. This is why you test as you go. There we go. That's how it works. All righty, we've done everything but the negatives. So go back to the slides. Let's make sure we've covered everything that you need for the lab. We've talked about what a function is, how you define it, why you use it. We've talked about how you call it. You set arguments, and you make sure that the arguments match up with the you make sure that the argument matches up with the parameters. Why do we use it? If you're going to do the same thing multiple times, not like in a loop in different parts of a program, you write a function. You could rewrite the code every time. We talked about editing a string and then editing another string and editing a third string. You could rewrite that editing a string code every time, but you're likely to do it differently somewhere. You're likely to do what I did and mess up. You could just copy and paste the same code every time, but if you're copying and pasting a bug, now you have to fix it everywhere, like me. So the bottom line is writing with functions is going to simplify the program and makes it easier to get the program correct. Again, I was writing things a little bit at a time, and that's why I was able to figure out what I was doing wrong. We'll talk about functions versus methods on Wednesday rather. We've talked a little today about user-defined functions. These are user-defined functions that we are writing, that you are writing code for. Python already has a number of built-in functions you've already used. Print is a built-in function. Print is a function. If you were to go dig out the code for print, you would find there's a def print with a parameter list in it, and it actually is a function that works and does things for you. The argument in this case is whatever you pass to print. Length is a function. Okay, length is a function that takes a value of a string, a list, something else, and returns how many elements are in it. Okay, so built-in functions come with Python. We've used them without knowing what they are. Now we understand what they are, so we can add user-defined functions to them. We're talking about writing user-defined functions. Where do you define them? Usually above the main program. That's not required, but for our purposes, we'll put the functions above the main program just to make it clear this is a function. So we usually start with your initial header comments. This is my program. This is my assignment. This is who I am, my section, today's date, etc. Then you have any constants you define. Then after the constants, you define your functions. Functions will have comment blocks like the first one I showed you in the March 8th coding for edit file that says, this is what this function does, these are the parameters, and this is what it returns. Then you have your main program. Now here is why finally we ask you to have this if name equals main, because it says above this is not the main program, above this are the functions, after this is the main program. So you normally in this class are going to define your functions above before if name equals main, so that Python knows these are functions, this is the main. Where do you call them? You can call them anywhere. Okay, anywhere other than on the left-hand side of an equal sign. We've talked about that a little bit before. What that means is you can call functions from the main program. You can call functions from another function. Can a function call another function? Oh, yeah. Can a function call the main program? Oh, no. A function cannot call the main program. The main program is special. That's why we have that if name equals main thing. That's a special value that we can't use. Can a function call itself? Yes, that's called recursion, and it comes up after spring break. We'll get into that because that's a special case. But a function can be called from the main program. A function can be called from another function. You do not have to only call up in what you've defined. In the last example, we had a function and then another function defined after it that we called. That's okay. You don't have to predefine things in Python. We'll get into that more on Wednesday. Does function have to be defined before it can be called? Got ahead of myself by one slide. No, that's what we just did. When we say a function is called before it's defined, that what we're talking about is here. We're talking about get dates, calls, user input. User input is not defined till we get down to here. That's what we mean with this slide. You can call the function before it's defined. In Python, you don't have to organize things. So you can be a little sloppy typing in your code as you get bigger and bigger programs with more functions. Okay. As a note that this is going to come up in homework 6, but we'll get to that. Matching the arguments and parameters, again, they're in order. And I've got a couple of slides that illustrate if you have a call down here, you match the main program Y to the function X. You do not match by name. The fact that this is Y and this is X in the main program and this is X and this is Y in the function, that's meaningless. Python doesn't care about names. It matches on order. First argument, first parameter. This value gets passed to here. What happens if they don't match? You get an error. If you try to run this code right here, subtract with just one argument with a function that has two parameters, this program will crash and Python will tell you in a very nasty tone that you didn't match arguments and parameters, and so it's not going to run. So you have to match. Last term, scope of variables. This comes up on the lab tomorrow. A variable can be directly seen and used in a program in what is called its scope. Okay. Any variable defined in the main program has global scope. Any variable defined in the main program can be seen everywhere in the program and can be used everywhere in the program. If I wanted to, in this program, because I have years in the main program, I could actually write this value. I could write something to years up in the function. Python will allow me. It is permissible because that is within scope. Anything defined in the main program can be accessed anywhere in the entire program. Any function, the main program. There be dragons. Therein lies danger. You should not do that. If you define in the main program, you should only directly use it in the main program. Okay. Python allows it because if you are a really skilled programmer who likes to live dangerously, then you can actually benefit by doing that. Okay. You can actually get some benefit out of doing these things with global variables. If you need them, though, pass them as arguments. It's better for everybody if you need a value in the function, you pass an argument to the function with that value, and you do not let the function directly access the main program variable. Just please don't. It leads to bugs that you will never find. When we say in Python, don't use global variables, this is what we mean. A global variable is something that's defined in the main program. It's global in scope. It can be seen everywhere in the program. We do not want to access it from a function, even though Python will let us. Python will give you the toys. Don't abuse them. Okay? Pass it as arguments. Now, if a variable is defined in a function, it can only be seen in that function. So going back to this, in this function, L can only be accessed from the main program. The main program cannot access that variable L. No other function can access that variable L. Only within this function does this have any meaning. That is a local variable. So on the lab, you'll get into scope, you'll get into local and global variables. Global variables are those defined in the main program, and they can be accessed globally. Anywhere in the program can access them, but generally, please don't. Local variables are variables defined in the function, and the main program cannot access them. Only that particular function can access them. So that's what we mean by scope. And again, like I said, when you see the lab tomorrow, that'll make more sense. You'll get into it. And then the rest of this is examples, but we've used up time. And I did rush through a little bit because I wanted to cover everything so that nothing is brand new to you tomorrow in lab. But we will cover this in more detail on Wednesday. There's a whole bunch of subtleties I left out in an attempt to cover everything. At this point, then, we're out of time. I have plenty of time to stay on. So the people who had questions on homework 5, what specifically did you have? I'm sorry, the lab that's due today. What specific questions you have? If you don't have questions on lab or homework, feel free to go, and I'll talk to you Wednesday.
So I guess my question for the lab, so I understand what the rotation part of the string is, but I'm not really clear on the offset portion of it.
Sure. Let me look at the assignment. Hang on just a second. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. I'll come back on. Damn it. I'm trying to get into my folder with all the labs is why Google Drive is giving me a problem here. Let's see, here we go. Spring 21. This is lab number 5, correct?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. Let me come back to sharing again. Okay. And so hang on. Offset. Okay. Let's see. Okay, a rotation with offset 4. Okay. All right, let's see. String. Okay, so offset 4. Well, the offset is just how many characters apart. So what it's basically the difference between where you are and the first one. So for example, here, okay, if you start here and you shift by 4, then you see it's a rotation. Or if you shift by 8, you see it's a rotation. So if you shift by 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, it's not a rotation. It's just if you shift. So the offset just means how many characters down the string do you have to go before you get a circular rotation. So this says you get a rotation if you go down 4 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get a rotation if you go down 8 from here and go down 8 characters. That also gives you a rotation. So the offset is just how many characters do you have to go down.
Okay, gotcha. So robots doesn't have any rotations because even if you go down all the way, it doesn't repeat.
Correct. So there's no rotations. It doesn't matter what the offset. What you do is you check the offset 1, right? R and then O. Well, that's not a rotation. Then you check the offset 2, R to B. That's not a rotation. You check the offset 3 and so on. And for each offset, you find it's not a rotation. So you don't print anything, or you just print the message that it's not a rotation.
Okay, great. That
Okay.
makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
That's all I had.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question about homework. The homework. It was
Sure.
triangle.
Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen to show you guys what I'm confused on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Let's see. You should be able to. I'm going to stop sharing, so you should be able to share now.
Okay. Oh man, is it gonna let me share?
Okay, let me see if there's something I need to do to allow you to share. I stopped. So now let's see. Hang on a second. I don't think there's anything I needed to do to let you share. I don't want to share. Let's see.
So,
okay, can you describe what the issue is? I'm not sure why it's not letting you share. So
yeah, me neither. Oh wait, is it sharing now?
not yet.
Okay, never mind. It's just not gonna work.
Okay.
Okay. So it says, okay, so I don't know why, but it's not printing out like the A's or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't know why. I wonder. Can I send a picture in the chat?
You can try.
Okay, or maybe I'll just paste my piece of code or something like that because it's
okay. Don't go too. I'll let you go a few lines of code, but of course, don't go too much.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll just show you kind of what I have, and it's just not printing. Okay, so this is like, oh man, I don't know why I printed. Why?
Okay. All righty. If length is greater than 0, if char is allowed, for j in range 0, for j in range 0. That's one. Okay. What determines if a character is allowed?
If it's allowed, if the length is greater than 0. Oh, if the character is allowed. So I guess I named, like, I looked at the output and I just said, okay, if the hashtags, the @ I guess I named it, but I don't know how to use it unless it's a positive. Like, so does it just have to be a positive? Can I just say, okay, if it's positive or another character? Like, how does that work?
Well, what you would do is you would define the legal characters in a list. So you would say, like, allowed characters, you just allowed equals, and then something like this. Shift at hashtag, whatever the allowed characters are, you basically define a list like that. Okay, and then the way you can say that is you can say if char in allowed, and then that gives you the Boolean value you want. You just said if this is in that list, then you're good. So that's the way I would do it. Is I would define a list of what's valid, and then I would say if char in allowed, which means it's in one of those, it's in that list, it's one of those values, then you're good to go.
So if char in allowed is greater than, okay, gotcha.
Right,
okay,
where allowed is a list. It's allowed is the list of whatever your legal characters are.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
Professor, I just had a question. I know you gave me an extension for homework 4. I just wanted to know, like, when you want me to turn it in.
By tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the Discord management and make sure I've double set it for the 9th. But yeah, by tomorrow night, which midnight Tuesday night, basically about 30 hours from now.
Okay. Let me check.
And I will double check and make sure. If you have any problems, let me know, because I think I did it right, but there's always a possibility.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Anything else?
I have a question about
Yes.
the homework.
Sure.
So I am confused on the inverse rabbit problem.
Right.
So basically, like, well, the Fibonacci sequence is confusing, but basically I would like if like the problem, it's like it wants me to say how many rabbits, but it's almost like it's typing in like how many months I want.
Okay. Okay, let me go pull up the homework. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. And oh, I'm not sharing. Okay, hang on a second. I'm gonna pull up that homework problem so I know exactly what we're talking about, and then we can talk better. Let's see. So this is homework 4. And what part are you talking about here?
I have to pull it up as well.
No problem.
Just mainly the entire thing, I guess.
Okay. Okay, sure. All right. So problem 1, inverse rabbits. Okay. So if I gave you a number of months and 2 rabbits to start, we pretend there were 2 in the previous months and 0 in the month before that. Here's the number of rabbits in the first 2 months, straight with 2 rather than 1 like in the classical. Okay. Your goal is to calculate the number of months it takes to get to a specific number of rabbits, input an integer, which is the goal, and then calculate the months. Okay, so basically what you want to do is something like that. Like this. Let me share PyCharm so we can talk through the code. And let me get a new file. I think I've already used that one. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is we have the input, right? And we say rabbits equal int of input how many rabbits. And so now we have the number of rabbits we need. Now, what we're going to do, let me see, I'm looking to, let me go back and look and see if the assignment had any specific things on how to do it. Right. Okay. So yeah, this is fairly straightforward. It's actually, the description makes it harder than it really is. So what we do is we start month equals 0. Current rabbits equal 2. Past rabbits equals 0. Okay, so this is our initial condition. Now, what we want to do is while current rabbits is less than, rabbits is the goal, right? So as long as we have less than the number of rabbits that was input, we want to keep looping, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we do is at this point, we say we have to update these variables by adding these two together, or the two things together. So I'm going to create a temporary is equal to current rabbits plus past rabbits. Okay, that's the new value. And this is the Fibonacci sequence. This is adding the two together. Okay. The new value is the sum of the previous two. Now I just have to update. Past rabbits. And then current rabbits equal temp. And then month, we have to update by 1. And now we print message. You know, whatever the message is, that this is where we suggest, you know, that you print out in month 0, you know, in month, there are current rabbits. Okay, so that's just the core of the loop, right? And so you start with 0 and 2, and so you determined the number you need, right? And so you say, okay, now let's make 0. We don't have enough yet, so we now have 0 plus 2 equals 2. We update the previous values. We update the month. And in month 1, there are 2 rabbits. Now we come back. 2 is still less than the number we need. So we say, okay, the new number is 2 plus 2 is 4. Update 2 for month 2. And now we can print out that in month 2, there are 4 rabbits. Then we come back and we say, okay, 4 plus 6. Okay, and we now have 6 rabbits, and we just update these values and increment. And in month 3, there are 6 rabbits. So let's see if I can get this to run to demonstrate for you. Okay, in your console. Okay, and so what this does is, why did it not run? Let's see. So, because I've got a mismatched parentheses here, and so it thinks I haven't ended the. Sorry, that was a typo on my part. Okay. All right, let me wipe that out and start with a new console. Let's figure out what I did. Okay. Make sure I didn't. Now, I didn't fix that typo. Sorry. There we go. What didn't I indent? Line 12. Okay, how many rabbits? 100. There we go. In month 1, there are 2 rabbits. In month 2, there are 4. In month 3, there are 6. 2 plus 4, 4 plus 6 is 10. 6 plus 10 is 16. 10 plus 16 is 26. 16 plus 26 is 42. 26 and 42 is 68. 42 and 68 is 110, and now there's more than 100, so it finished. I didn't print out the, the summary. It took 9 months, but that was it. So basically, that's what you're trying to do in that one, is you're just writing a while loop, and the while loop is going to go until the number of rabbits you currently have is greater than the goal. As long as while this is less than your goal, and the goal is what was input, while what you have is less than the goal, then you just add the two together, increment the month. You could print this out. This is the optional thing it talks about in the assignment, is the optional print statement to you keep track of what you're doing, and then you print out the final statement when you're done. So does that help, or is there anything else, anything there I can explain on that?
Yeah, that helps a little.
Okay, because this is the, when we talk about Fibonacci sequence, basically this is it. This right here is the Fibonacci sequence statement. It takes the last two values and adds them together to get the new value. This mess is just to do the arithmetic because of the way I laid out the variables. That's why I needed that temp. There are probably easier ways to explain, that I updated what month I'm in, but this is a simple way to do it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Other questions?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, fine.
All right.
No problem. I'll talk to you later.
If I have other questions, can
Yep.
when is the latest time that I should email you?
I'll be checking off and on, and you can either email or you can direct message me on Discord. Either one.
Okay. Thank you.
So no problem. I'll be checking off and on. Okay. Bye.
Bye.